as a first-time home buyer, what are some of the things that you've seen come up, or what are some of the things that you help your buyers avoid? In other words, potential risks or potential things wrong with the property. I mean, what are some of the things that you can help a first-time home buyer with?
Yeah. The first thing is, when you're first looking at properties, and maybe it's the first one you're showing them, you try and get a feel for exactly what they like and everything. But ultimately, you do want to point out, hey, when this is going to be your first home.
Yeah.
I remember when I bought my first home, and I wish I would have done it a little bit differently. I wish I wouldn't have bought such a fixer-upper, because when you are buying your very first home, you don't want to be overwhelmed when you move in that you got to do a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
So my first thing is to encourage them to say, hey, why don't you find something, maybe there's some cosmetic things, but don't buy a complete fixer-upper, because you don't want to get overwhelmed once you move in.
So I have Matt Metz here, and you are my older brother. I had my younger brother, Dan, on yesterday.
Did you? Oh, great.
So he was here yesterday. Dan, we talked a lot about the listing, what that job responsibility is, and how that affects the whole real estate process.
Yeah.
So you help buyers, and tell us a little bit how you got into real estate.
Well, like you said, Dan was in here yesterday.
Yeah.
I follow in his footsteps pretty much everything in real estate. So Dan had a huge part to play for me getting in the business. You had some too, encouragement. Yeah. So, I was in a job, a really good job, a design draftsman, working, 8 to 5. Decided, I saw my brother and you, and, making good money, and doing sales, and you started doing sales, and I saw you work your way up. So I decided, hey, I should probably get into the business.
Yeah, nice.
And Dan, had a huge part to play in that. So, he invited me to sit down with him and a broker, and we kind of went from there. And I've been following Dan everywhere he's gone since then.
Well, you've been crushing it. You've been crushing it. Worked with a lot of buyers. So for our listeners, so Matt works with mostly buyers.
That's true. Yes.
And you've helped a lot of first-time home buyers, and you probably have a bunch right now you're working with.
Yeah, most of the buyers right now in the market I feel are first-time home buyers.
Yeah. And so this podcast, the majority of the listeners is geared for first-time home buyers. So the content I want to talk about today is mostly for first-time home buyers. So keeping it geared for those buyers, and basically sharing your experience and your knowledge on how you can help first-time home buyers and some of the things that they can watch out for.
Sure.
When did you actually get into real estate?
2012, I got my license.
I didn't realize it was that. It was back in 2012. That's
2012.
That's right.
Oh, it was
so 10 years.
Living in Chico.
13 years.
Yeah, living in Chico. Just had my firstborn. My first showings, I remember holding Bennett, baby boy. And then started showing property.
Wow. In Chico.
In Chico.
Okay, that's right. I remember.
Yeah.
Yeah, you had. And when you started, you were working with.
I was working with Corey Meyer.
Corey Meyer, yep.
And he got a couple agents down in the.
That's right.
Chico area.
I remember.
Kind of went for it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So I have some questions here for you, and the market's crazy right now. What's your feelings right now on the real estate market in general?
I hear a lot of buyers say the market's crazy right now.
Yeah.
And they're trying to get me to agree that the market is crazy right now.
Right. And when they say crazy, what do they mean by crazy?
Crazy meaning they're always mentioning the interest rate. That's the number one thing we get, or I get, is interest rate. It's a horrible time to buy, right, Matt? And then I'm like, well, if you look at it like this, maybe it's a good time to buy. It depends on how you're going to approach it.
Yeah.
So when somebody comes at me with crazy market, I usually try and find out what they think is crazy.
Oh, I see. So kind of qualify. What
qualify
does it mean to you?
what does crazy mean to you? And obviously, it's not what it was 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
So
That was a crazy market.
That was a crazy market.
That was very crazy.
That would have been a great crazy for people
Yeah.
that took advantage of it when they could have.
Well, I remember 2 years ago talking to potential buyers, and they're like, no, we're not getting in.
Right.
Because they're like, prices are too high and there's too many people bidding. We don't want to get in right now.
Right. I had a lot of people saying that they were, waiting for the perfect home to come along. And they waited and they waited and they waited, and now they wish they would have not have waited.
It's hard, yeah.
So
it's hard. And some did buy.
A lot of people bought.
Yeah.
We were very busy. Very blessed to be busy during that time, and still blessed to be busy now.
As it relates to first-time home buyers, I'd like to start off talking about what is a buyer's agent compared to a listing agent. Me and Dan talked about this yesterday a little bit, but what is the role of a buyer's agent, and how does that help a buyer and or a first-time home buyer?
Yeah, so a buyer's agent to me is somebody that's helping people go out and find that ideal home. They are listening a lot, hopefully listening more than they're talking when they're working with the buyer.
Yeah.
Finding out what these people are really wanting in their next home or their new home or their first home. It's definitely listening to their needs and their wants. And I think the more you listen to the first-time home buyer, you're going to learn a lot about them, and you're also going to learn their motivations and where you can kind of help guide them down a path that they're going on, and they're going to go on it whether you're there or not. And it's a matter of what you have to offer service-wise to see if they want to use you as their buyer's agent.
So what I heard you say is a good buyer's agent that's helping buyers find a home is a really good listener. Finding exactly what their goals are. They might each buyer has different goals. Each one is very different from the other. And so what you're saying is really listening, slowing down, listening to exactly what they need.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think that's key to building any relationship, whether it's a first-time home buyer or, somebody you meet.
Yeah.
It's like you always want to listen to their story and try and help them.
In addition to that, what else do you help first-time home buyers do? I mean, think of a buyer that has no idea.
The best thing you can do with a first-time home buyer is get them into the office. Have a sit down with them. Not a lot of people are doing this out there.
Yeah.
But, getting them into in a space that's where they can actually sit down and you have a chance to discuss what their goals are.
Yeah.
If you're doing it at the property, it's a much more difficult to get their concentration, and or there's a lot less distractions than when you're sitting in an office.
It makes sense.
And you can pull up anything up on the computer, anything that comes up in a conversation. Hey, why don't we take a deeper look at that?
Yeah.
And then having a good presentation is huge.
Yeah.
Of what they're going to expect in the process. A lot of buyers, first-time home buyers, have no idea what to expect. Let them know, hey, we do help you with the inspections. We help you, with lenders or, different things that are going to help you buy that home.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have a lot of things to worry about.
Yeah.
So that we're kind of hand-holding them through the process, and we're not going to let them go or falter along the process. I
love the part that you said about expectations, because a lot of buyers, they just don't know. Like they don't know if it's their first time doing something. You don't know what you don't know. And so working with a buyer's agent like yourself, they're going to have a lot of trust, because there's got to be a lot of trust, and working with someone that really knows what they're doing. Working with you for this many years, I know you know what you're doing. And you help a lot of families. There's a lot of families that you help.
Yeah.
What I was going to say about that is that experience goes a long ways. Experience of knowing the market, and experience with, looking for things that could come up, which kind of leads me to my next question is, as a first-time home buyer, what are some of the things that you've seen come up, or what are some of the things that you help your buyers avoid? In other words, potential risks or potential things wrong with the property. I mean, what are some of the things that you can help a first-time home buyer with?
Yeah. The first thing is, when you're first looking at properties, and maybe it's the first one you're showing them, you try and get a feel for exactly what they like and everything. But ultimately, you do want to point out, hey, when this is going to be your first home.
Yeah.
I remember when I bought my first home, and I wish I would have done it a little bit differently. I wish I wouldn't have bought such a fixer-upper, because when you are buying your very first home, you don't want to be overwhelmed when you move in that you got to do a ton of stuff.
Yeah.
So my first thing is to encourage them to say, hey, why don't you find something, maybe there's some cosmetic things, but don't buy a complete fixer-upper, because you don't want to get overwhelmed once you move in. But that's huge. It depends on the person and what their goals are, but ultimately, first-time home buyers is fun to work with them. I sometimes prefer working with first-time home buyers because they don't know anything. So you're the guide along the way, and you can kind of help shape where they're going to go and what they're going to do. And then to see that, them find that ideal home is pretty cool.
Working with an experienced agent and seeing many, many homes. This is what I told many first-time home buyers, and really any buyer, is you want an agent that is in a lot of homes and sees a lot of issues with properties.
Yeah.
You can,
I can spot the issues with the property.
You walk into the property, you say, oh, look at the roof, or look at the gutters, or look at whatever is going on. You know what you're looking at. That first-time home buyer might not know what they're looking at.
Yeah, and my background was in, construction and design, so I always have had a feel for what I'm looking at when it comes to homes.
Yeah.
Designing homes, built homes.
Yeah.
Things like that. So I had a lot of experience to lean on when I'm showing people first-time home, for the first time.
Yeah, first time. Yeah. That's awesome. No, I think that's great. The other question I have is, obviously it is a different market than what we were a couple years ago.
Yeah.
And there's homes on the market. How do you decipher which families that you're working with? They have like a goal in mind that they're looking at, maybe a price range.
Correct.
Are you looking for? Maybe it depends on the person, but I guess the question is, how do you find the properties for the first-time home buyers?
It depends on how they come into my and how
you get them,
how I get them,
yeah,
how the lead comes in, or who I'm calling. But I usually, for a first-time home buyer, getting them into the office first, and then showing them a bunch of homes on the computer through the MLS, and showing them what their options are, what areas they like to be in, how much do they know about Reading? Are they a first time to Reading, or they know the area?
Yeah.
That's huge. You're trying to narrow it down to their budget.
Yeah.
Budget is huge for first time home buyers.
Yeah.
That's probably the number one thing that they're concerned about.
Budget.
Because they've never owned a home before. They're going from renting to buying, and it's like they want to be able to afford it, number one.
Yeah.
And so with your help, I've helped a lot of first-time home buyers afford that first home.
Yeah.
So
the financing is completely separate.
Totally.
I mean, you have two major things. You're getting a mortgage that's going to be a big mortgage, a long-term debt that they're going to borrow for 30 years. Yeah. It's the biggest financial decision they'll make, and then they have this asset, this home that they now have to take care of.
Right.
It'd be a lot bringing those together for someone that is doing it for the first time. Exactly. It's a big decision, which is why I'm doing this podcast, because my passion and my heart is to really get some education out there to help as many first-time homebuyers as we possibly can.
Yeah. Today I showed a first-time homebuyer about an hour ago.
Yeah.
First time I've met him, and we went to one home, and I could tell he didn't really understand the process, because he wanted to, hey, let's negotiate right now. Let's negotiate before we actually get into contract. And it's sometimes difficult to agree with a buyer, but yet disagree when you're trying to say, hey, there is a time for this, but not right now.
So that's actually a great segue. Let's talk about that. So you had this buyer, and he wanted to negotiate with the seller like right away before he went into contract.
Exactly.
What does going into contract mean?
Going into contract means that you're made an offer, and then you're gonna send that over to the other side or the listing agent.
It's a written offer.
It's a written offer.
Okay.
You fill it in. You fill in the price, the terms, and then you're going to present that, or you're going to have that selling agent present that to their client.
So you, as their realtor, helping the buyer, you'll help them fill out this offer.
I help them fill out the offer. I go over all the all the things, all the terms.
Yeah.
We try and narrow it down to the main points.
Yeah.
Offer price.
I see.
Credits.
Yep.
Deposit. Warranty. And if you can nail down and then anything that you want included into that offer, those are the biggest things you're going to try and nail down first. You fill that in on the contract. You send that over. You get 3 days for them to respond. By default, I usually have a strategy of trying to increase or decrease that time limit so that other offers don't come in.
Decrease the amount of time for the seller to respond to that offer.
Yeah. Not something that's going to turn them off, but something that's going to, help them just make a decision sooner.
Yeah. So you had this buyer, and what he was wanting is he didn't necessarily want to make this offer. He said, hey, what does the seller want for the price? Let's find out what this is and see if we negotiate.
He actually wants to talk to the seller.
Yeah.
And I said, well, this isn't quite how this works in this market right now.
Yeah.
How about we come up with an offer that you're comfortable with, and let's negotiate a price, that you're willing to offer.
I think a lot of buyers and first-time home buyer, I think they think that once they've made the offer, like that's the final, it's over, and it's over, and it's not gonna. They've just bought a house. If they accept, they've just bought a house, and oh my goodness, this is
correct.
They sleep on it.
Because in some states, that's the way it is. Once the offer's there, it's in some states.
Yeah,
it is.
I actually didn't know that was different in other states.
Other states is different.
Okay, and in California, it's different.
Correct.
Explain that.
I'm licensed in California. California has a really good contract, in my opinion, of making an offer. It's more geared towards the buyer than the seller, because once the seller accepts, it's much harder for a seller to back out than a buyer.
Interesting. I didn't know that.
In Oregon, it's geared for both, to my understanding.
Yeah.
You make an offer, that's the offer. And just from experience of listening to others that have, worked in Oregon and or done business up there, it's much different.
What I also know is that once they make the offer, a lot of buyers think, I just bought this house, but after they get the accepted contract is when most of the negotiating starts, or can start.
It can. You can. You have the 17 days to inspect any property.
California contract. So what is the 17 days? Go ahead and explain.
It's called your inspection contingency period, where you can actually have 17 days to inspect any property. You can do your due diligence. You can have any inspections you want.
So let's say I'm a first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
And I come to you and you write, I love the house.
Yeah.
And house is listed for $350,000, let's say.
Sure.
And I love the house. I say, Matt, let's go ahead and make an offer.
Yeah.
Let's say we offer 350, let's say 340,000, right? They accept the offer.
Correct.
Okay, at 340,000. Now me as the buyer, I'm like, oh crap, what did I just do? So what you're saying is that you didn't just buy a house, you just started the process, and now what I like to explain to buyers is it's just you and the seller now negotiating. There is no other buyers that can come in and take the property away during this time.
Right.
So when you said contingency period, explain what the contingency period is, because I think that's important.
Sure. Contingency period, you have 3 contingencies, but this one is for inspection that I'm talking about, the 17 days. That mainly is for you to inspect the property, and if you decide in that 17 days, you decide that it's not the best property for you, and or you found some things that you don't like about the property, you can back out, and all you're going to be out is the money that you put in for the inspections.
Okay, so I just made an offer, they accepted, and I get my home inspection, I get maybe an appraisal, and all of a sudden we find something wrong with the house.
Yeah.
I can decide, even though I'm in contract, I can say, hey, I don't want this house anymore.
Correct.
Or what can that buyer do? Can they negotiate a lower price? Maybe negotiate lower credits?
Yeah. What I always encourage the buyer to do, don't just back out just straight away.
Yeah.
Hey, let's see if they're willing to play ball with you
Yeah.
on and maybe find a compromise between the two.
Yeah.
And see, hey, it does need a roof. How about we negotiate a roof?
Yeah.
And worst case, and I try and set good expectations on that. They're not going to give you the whole roof. Maybe they'll give you 50%. Maybe they'll give you a little more.
But at least ask.
At least ask. And, worst case, they say no.
Yeah.
Then you can either make a decision then.
Yeah.
But these small decisions all add up at the end, and hopefully everybody's happy.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. I want to tell a story. So it wasn't my first time, but I kind of used this strategy to buy a house back in 2013. I knew the home wasn't going to appraise for what I was making the offer for.
Right.
Now, this is the time when, there was multiple offers on property. Right now, there are multiple offers, but there was more offers on this property. I loved this property.
Yeah.
And there was a price. It was listed for $425,000, and I really, really wanted this house. And I knew I wanted to be the highest bidder, but I knew. So what I did was I offered $515,000. I went like $75,000 more, but I knew that the home wasn't going to appraise for this much.
Right.
And you got to be careful because at this particular house was owned by the bank. So it was owned by the bank. And so the bank actually, I knew that the bank was going to have to lower the price, but same thing would apply for an inspection or something with negotiating after you're in contract. You can negotiate the price after. You can negotiate other terms after you're in contract.
Usually, the appraisal is something that we always try and discuss with the first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time they are gun-shy with if there is multiple offers. Hey, I don't want to get in. I hear it many, many times. I don't want to get in a bidding war.
Yeah.
Don't want to get in a bidding war. I'm not into bidding wars, and the biggest challenge there is the mindset. If their mindset is, I don't want to be bidding up on a property, it's not that it's going to get bid up. It's that, hey, you got to get your foot in the door to have a chance at this property.
Yeah.
But let's get your foot in the door first.
And there's strategies around a bidding war.
Totally.
There's many strategies. And so like in this example, there was 4 other people that made offers on this same property, which is why I went to $500,000. So they ended up picking me as a buyer because I went all the way up to $500,000. I got an appraisal, and the home only appraised for $450,000.
Right.
So then we got it dropped down to $450,000. The home was listed for $425,000. There could have been another buyer that offered $470,000.
Right.
For that house, and I got it for $460,000.
Right.
So that's what happens when you go into contract with a seller. You start that negotiating with your inspections, and there might have been another buyer that lost out because you at least got your foot in the door, like you're saying.
Yeah. Once you get that acceptance on that contract, now it's time to really get to the nitty gritty and play ball.
Yeah.
And get your inspections. We try and get the inspections ordered within the first 7 to 10 days, so that we have a little extra time to negotiate afterwards.
Yeah.
That's key.
Yeah.
Working with Josh Barker Real Estate is probably super ideal.
I was going to say that because working with an agent that knows this, that understands this, that does this day in and day out, with a super high level of expertise and knowledge to be able to help these buyers. It's huge. Yeah.
Yeah. It comes down to what we the experience we have, obviously, but also we want to help them. That's the ultimate goal here, is helping people. And if they feel like they're getting help from you, you're going to have a client.
Yeah.
Ultimately, with a first-time home buyer.
What kind of advice would you give? Let's say I'm a first-time home buyer, and I give you a call and I say, "Hey, Matt, I'm looking. It's my first time. I don't know if I should buy yet in this market. Interest rates are high. I can afford to buy, but I there's nothing out there I really like. But I am a first-time home buyer. I do want to eventually buy a house. What would you tell a buyer?"
Front and foremost, I would try and get them face to face with me, to get a more understanding of where their situation is.
Yeah.
I want to know their story. I want to know their situation and what's gonna, be the best for them. If they're really a few months away, I'm not going to push too hard. That, if there's conditions there, that I can't surpass or they can't surpass. It's more about finding out what their story is and then kind of going from there. But getting face to face really helps. So the first thing I would be like is, hey, Pete, why don't we sit down for 15 to 20 minutes, have a conversation about what buyers are doing in this market right now to get really good homes at really good prices and show you the advantage of purchasing now versus later. A lot of people right now are putting it on the shelf for the holiday. Do you want more competition or less competition in this market?
Let's talk about that. So what about the holidays makes a difference for a first-time home buyer?
People are very busy. People have a lot of family going on, they're traveling, they're doing this, they're doing that. And not a lot of people are thinking, hey, let's
buy a house.
Buy a house and move.
Yeah.
Whether they're renting or whether they're stepping up or stepping down, it's like the holiday season is usually not the time they're going to want to do that. So
I don't necessarily want to move my whole family after Thanksgiving and before Christmas.
Yeah, and school's another big thing with kids. So you kind of, I put myself in their shoes. Could I get a better deal during the holidays? Absolutely, I think, and I believe that.
Yeah. Well, it's proven.
It's not necessarily a better deal. It might be you might have more options.
Or maybe find that dream house that maybe that house has, doesn't have any offers, maybe, or in the summer it'd have 5-6 offers and get bedded up.
Right.
It happens every year. And I'll put this graph up, but every single year inventory rises in the winter.
Right.
In the winter months, and every single year in the summer months, inventory comes down. And that's because people are moving when they don't have school, they're less busy, and that's when people move. And so obviously it's hard to move during Christmas and Thanksgiving, so that makes sense. But what you're saying is you could potentially find a better deal during the winter months.
I when you're buying a home, you don't want to follow the crowd necessarily with when everybody else is buying. You want to be a buyer with everyone else, or do you want to buy when nobody else is buying?
I like that.
It depends on the reasons, but ultimately you want to try and get a good deal. While there's not less competition.
Are there good deals going on right now?
There are some good deals out there. I just came from one.
Really?
I can't believe it's not sold.
Tell us about it.
The home is on Delightful Way. It's got 360-degree view.
Delightful?
Delightful Way. It's the first question you get asked a lot is when you show up to a home, why isn't this sold yet?
Yeah.
This seems like a good deal. Everybody's different when they come into the a home.
What's it listed for?
$365. Yeah, it's $365 Delightful Way. It's on top of a mountain. It's got some acreage.
Really? That does seem like a great deal.
Yeah, I can tell you why it hasn't sold. There's 2 stories. Second story is a 1-bedroom, and it's got a circular staircase, metal staircase going up to it.
Oh.
So it's not
ideal
friendly for families.
Yeah. With kids and stuff like that.
That's going to knock out a lot of families.
Yeah.
And, there's some pretty big elevation drop around the property. So with kids and no fencing, that's going to probably knock out a lot of people with kids. This is more of your...
How long has it been on the market?
I would have to check. I don't remember.
Yeah.
It's been on a little while.
Okay. So that's a good deal.
I think it's a good deal. It's a 3-bedroom. Some of these properties that I get to show are pretty cool. This was one of them.
Yeah.
I've only shown maybe 3 or 4 homes this year that really were like, whoa. And this was one of those, oh, wow, this is cool.
This is a good deal.
Yeah.
This is a couple questions just regarding, higher interest rates and affordability.
Yeah.
I know that's a challenge. What would you tell a first-time homebuyer, help with a first-time homebuyer that, they want to buy, but the affordability is really expensive. It's challenging for them, but they want to get into a place, but with higher interest rates.
Yeah, it comes down to what they can afford. If they can afford to get into a home now, I always tell the best time to buy real estate is when you can afford it. And if you're a first-time home buyer and you can get a position in the market, it's much better than 100% interest on a rent.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to find a good rental in Reading right now. So
why is that?
Because we have a good rental market in Reading. Are you familiar with the market here? There's a lot.
Yeah, I know. I know. Yeah.
I know you know.
I know.
So
yeah,
it's definitely the
More
affordability
population.
is driving rentals because if you can't afford to buy, which a lot of people can't right now,
they're renting,
and
that's driving your rents up.
Yeah. So if those renters have good jobs, good work history, low debt to income, and they can buy, I always think it's a better time, the best time to buy.
Yeah.
So that's kind of what I kind of shoot for is is this person going to be approved to purchase? If they're approved and their motivation's good, then let's find you a house and let's do it quick.
Sure. I agree. I 100% agree with that.
Yeah.
What I tell the buyers that I work with is if you can afford a payment, if you can actually afford it, then get in as soon as possible.
Yeah. And, if you have to cut out Starbucks and the car wash and different things that you're going to, spend money on, there's a lot of people out there that can't afford homes. Yeah. But if they have all that frill that they're spending every month, and decided not to spend it, they could afford a home.
Yeah. So the average payment right now for, let's say, if you wanted to buy a $350,000 home for a first-time home buyer, payment for $350,000 is about $3,000 a month. For $300,000 is about $2,500 a month.
Right.
For $300,000. So let's say someone's renting for $1,500. I did the math on this. If someone's renting for $1,500 and they want to buy for, let's say, $300, they're going to spend an extra $1,000 a month. I mean, I did the math, but not that math. That's easy math.
Right.
But that extra $1,000, what do they get for that? And I was kind of looking at it, and obviously it's the timing. And so if you can afford that $2,500, I say go for it. The reason why is because home values continue to appreciate.
Right.
And in Reading, the average over the last 10 to 15 years is about 5%. If you go back all the way to 1942, home prices have appreciated on average about almost 5% per year. And that's huge. 300,000, 5% of 300,000 in 1 year is how much? 5 times 5% would be $15,000, right?
Of 100,000.
Of 300,000.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, 15,000. So first year you got $15,000 of equity. That's 5% appreciation. So, and they also get the amortization. So what I tell buyers that do want to get in the market right now is, hey, you're paying $1,500. Your landlord's not going to just come and say, hey, congratulations, we're going to lower that rent for you this year. Or, hey, congratulations, we're going to keep the rent the same. They're not going to do that. They're every single year they're going to increase that rent of what they're legally able to. I think in California it's like 5%. Every year it can go up. Well, on a mortgage it does. It's fixed.
Right.
It's you locked in your housing.
Right.
When you buy a house, that's locked in.
You're not going to have an increase in rent next year.
You're not going to have an increase in your mortgage.
Yeah. Ultimately, the only way it could go up is if insurance goes up.
Homeowners insurance and property. But if your property taxes are going to, means your home value is going up.
Right.
Actually, the opposite is true because on a mortgage, you can actually lower that payment.
Yeah.
And this is what a lot of first-time home buyers don't understand is that rates go up and they come down. And I don't know exactly when they'll come back down, but eventually they'll come back down and there'll be opportunities to actually lower that payment down and become more affordable. So like, I'm going to tell you a story. So when I bought my house, it was only $130,000. It was a brand new bill. It was back in 2001. And
I remember.
At the time that we had just come out of the .com crash and we people lost their retirements, the stock market was, down a lot. We had 9/11 and, it was a scary time. Well, I was making about $2,500 a month working for Verizon Wireless. And my mortgage payment ended up being about $1,100. It was like 40-something% of my income, which is scary. Totally. It was scary for me. It's scary. Well, I ended up doing it. I think my interest rate was around 7%, and I got in, and it was hard that first year, 2 years hard, and I didn't do the Starbucks like you're saying, and I didn't do the extra stuff.
Yeah, but I remember canceling my Verizon bill. I
when
got
you
rid
bought
of my cell phone.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's $200 right there.
Yeah. And so over time, what happened was my income increased.
Yeah.
And the interest rates ended up coming down. I refinanced. But if you're in the market to purchase, if you're a first-time home buyer, if you're not on fixed income is different. But if you're a working W-2 employee or something,
Yeah.
most of the time their income's going to continue to rise, but that payment's going to be staying fixed.
Yeah.
And this is why rent continues to go up, because wages continue to go up.
Right.
I definitely see why, that's super important for first-time home buyers.
And my first home buying process was not the great story. I bought in 07. 2007. Josh Barker was my agent. He showed me three homes, and I bought one of them. I bought for $299,000, and the next year, we all know what happened then. The market crashed.
Yeah, I was living with you.
Yeah,
I moved in with you.
I remember.
Yeah.
But even then, I was still excited about buying, even though I did have to short sell my house, my first home. It didn't make me want to stop being, a homeowner. I wanted to get back in the market as soon as possible.
Yeah.
So it took a while, 6-7 years before we bought again. But it definitely is the only way to really gain wealth.
Yeah.
When you're young and
real estate.
Yeah, real estate.
Yeah.
I mean, it's got to be one of the top things to do to gain wealth quickly.
Yeah, I remember that time. Do you think that we're still in a? Do you think that we could have another 2007?
I don't see how we could have it in the real estate market. We might have it in other arenas of the world, but not necessarily in real estate.
Why is that?
It's something tangible. It's something you can put your hands on. It's it's something you own. I think right now, the biggest risk is credit card debt. I think that's got a risk for people. A lot of people have equity right now. Why would they walk away from equity? They would just sell.
And they didn't back in 2007.
Right.
People didn't have equity. Yeah.
So now they have the equity. Now banks are a lot more tighter these days. Income is a lot more strict.
Yeah.
The 2 years and this and that. So I don't see it just, a bubble at all.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think most people would agree that we're not on a bubble.
Yeah, I agree.
For the real estate market.
Yeah. Yeah. In order for a bubble, we need houses.
We need inventory.
Yeah.
A lot of inventory.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the inventory? Do you remember when the
2007, 2000? Well, I remember the inventory getting up to close to 3,000. It was like 2,800 homes on the market.
Yeah, and now we're sitting around 650.
Yeah. Yeah. If you see the inventory climb north of 1,500, that would be good for some because home values come down. Bad for others, for the existing homeowners,
right?
Depending on how you want to look at it. But that would be like over double the inventory. But where would this come from? Where would the homes come from?
Maybe in the bigger cities.
Bigger cities, yeah.
Bigger cities where people can't really,
Shasta County.
Yeah.
I will tell you, in Shasta County, we are the most affordable place
in California.
In California, based on our average income and based on our average sales price. Our average income, I believe, is close to the 70,000, 68,000, and average sales price is 410, maybe
410, 420.
Yeah, right in there.
It's it was down to 380.
It's come back up.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, Matt, I really appreciate you coming on. Any last advice that you would give to first-time home buyers?
As a first-time home buyer in this market, don't focus as much on getting the perfect home.
That's
the
good.
Very first time.
Yeah.
Find the home that you could work on and or think of a 2-year term and think you're going to own this for 2 to 4 years, and then you're going to get a better home and a better price probably.
Yeah.
And you're going to have the equity to go buy that better home.
Turn it, yeah.
So don't focus like this is your forever home. Focus on let's get you into the market.
Yeah, because it's a 30-year fix, a lot of buyers think, I'm going to have this for 30 years.
And the average, I think the average right now, you could probably correct me if I'm wrong, but people don't own a home for more than 4 years. I think it's like, it's way high.
Yeah. It was like 7 to 10 years was the average. I think it's down now. The average time someone has a mortgage, that's different than actually owning a house. Having a mortgage is right around that 5-year mark. The average is
that's what I was talking about.
Average having actually the debt
before they
refinance or sell, because obviously rates change, drop. You refinance out of that and get into a new mortgage.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is don't focus on having this home for 30 years.
Right. Focus on it for a period of time that you're comfortable with gaining equity.
Yeah.
And make sure that, when you buy that home, you take care of that home as a first-time home buyer.
Yeah.
And make sure that you do the upgrades that it needs, do the maintenance that it needs. As a first-time home buyer, you're just going to be building your equity, and then it'll set you up for the next one. But that's probably the number one thing I would say. The other thing is schools are huge for first-time home buyers with kids.
Finding good schools.
Yeah, young families finding their first home.
We have a lot of good schools here.
A lot of good schools. So there's a lot to choose from. Getting in a good neighborhood and in a good school district is huge
I like
too
that.
for the kids, because I got 3 kids, and so Channing. So
Yeah, that's good. I like that. So my last question. So I call this the podcast Dream Big. Yeah. And so what does Dream Big mean to you and your family?
Dream big to me, I've always dreamt. I think you probably know that.
Yeah.
To me, nothing's ever been out of reach. Nothing. And I can honestly say that. I think I could have done anything in my life. Where I'm at now, I love what I do. I love helping people. I have a passion for older people, and I would definitely continue to do real estate. As long as they'll let us do this, I'll be doing it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thanks a lot, Matt. Really appreciate it, man.
Absolutely.
Love
Thanks
you,
for
bro.
having me.